May 3, 2026. Texas Motor Speedway. One of those afternoons in NASCAR where the real story has absolutely nothing to do with who crossed the finish line first. For championship contenders destroyed before the checkered flag. A two-time champion publicly unraveling on the white flag lap. A veteran driver deliberately sending a competitor into the wall. And one of the most respected voices in the garage calling NASCAR's crown jewel package an embarrassment to the sport. All of that happened in a single afternoon, and every piece of it connects to something much larger, cracks forming under the pressure of the 2026 Cup Series season. Chase Elliott won the race. Let's give him his due before anything else. Elliott didn't lead until lap 152, when Corey Heim pitted on an off-cycle strategy. From that point forward, the number 9 Hendrick Chevrolet was in total control. His pit crew delivered their 3 fastest stops of the season on the same afternoon they needed to most. When Heim spun in turn 4 to bring out the final caution, Elliott survived a 4-lap shootout, got a push from teammate Alex Bowman off turn 2, cleared Denny Hamlin, and won by 0.407 seconds. Clean. Fast. Clinical. But what was happening around that victory told a completely different story about where this sport and its biggest names actually stand right now. Kyle Larson, the defending champion, tagged the wall on lap 160 and was done for the day. Christopher Bell, who had actually been leading the race, was wiped out on lap 68 trying to avoid Todd Gilliland and finished 38th, dead last. Joey Logano was eliminated on pit road by a chain reaction collision. Ty Gibbs was gone by lap 110. For legitimate contenders. For catastrophic days in a single race. Elliott didn't just win, he won because he was the last man standing in a field that was systematically destroying itself around him. That context matters when evaluating what his win means for the title picture. But before we get there, we need to talk about Kyle Busch, because what happened on that white flag lap is something the sport will be discussing for the rest of the season. Busch came to Texas having qualified 6th, running top 5, looking like this could finally be his day in what had already become a winless 2026 season. He was calm, composed, executing. And then came the white flag. On the backstretch, Busch and John Hunter Nemechek were racing hard for position. Both drivers have different versions of what happened first. What is not debated by anyone who watched the footage is this: Busch slammed into Nemechek's car. Both ended up wrecked. Busch fell to 20th, Nemechek finished 21st, 1 lap down, with a race that had been tracking toward a strong result suddenly gone. Nemechek posted on X afterward, "Not freaking clear. Great day going and just got wrecked." Busch fired back with his own version, claiming Nemechek didn't know where his car was in relation to the outside wall. 2 drivers, 2 completely different accounts, 1 wrecked race for both of them. But here is the part that actually matters beyond who was right or wrong in that specific moment. Busch had already been feuding with Carson Hocevar earlier in that same race. This was not one bad moment in isolation. This was a pattern compressed into a single afternoon, and that afternoon is itself a pattern compressed from an entire season. Kyle Busch sits 27th in the standings. No top 5s. No top 10s. His best finish of the year is 12th. He carries a career-worst streak of over 100 starts without a Cup Series win. He turns 41 years old on May 2nd. In the weeks before Texas, Busch described watching race film and studying data as something he does partly to show his 10-year-old son Brexton what it looks like to pour yourself completely into something. What Brexton watched his father do on Sunday was slam into a competitor out of frustration on the final lap of a race he was not going to win regardless of that contact. That image is worth examining carefully, because it tells you something real about where Kyle Busch's mental state is right now inside the number 8 camp. To understand how this partnership reached this breaking point, you need to walk through the full arc of the Busch-RCR relationship. When Busch was pushed out of Joe Gibbs Racing to make room for Ty Gibbs, Richard Childress offered him a lifeline with the iconic number 8. In 2023, Busch won 3 times in that car. Those 3 wins are the only wins he has ever produced in this partnership, across 3 full seasons. 2024 produced nothing. 2025 produced nothing. 2026 is tracking worse than either of those years, and the calendar has barely moved past the first third of the season. Internal changes were made repeatedly throughout this stretch. Adjustments on the pit box. Strategy overhauls. Personnel shifts. None of it moved the needle in any meaningful direction. People inside the garage point specifically to Martinsville earlier this 2026 season as the real moment things shifted for good, handling issues, execution mistakes, and a compounding sense of frustration that never fully resolved. The temperature inside the number 8 camp has been cold ever since that weekend, and Texas only added another layer of ice to the situation. The added complication that rarely gets discussed openly is this: Richard Childress reportedly asked Busch to return for 2026 not purely based on what Busch himself could produce on track, but to serve as a mentor for younger RCR drivers, specifically Jesse Love and Austin Hill, the team's next generation of Cup talent. Busch agreed to that arrangement. He returned. He has been trying. But there is no version of that setup that works emotionally for a two-time champion sitting 27th in the standings with over 100 winless starts behind him. You cannot ask someone wired the way Kyle Busch is wired to function as a placeholder and expect that to end well or quietly. Texas was exactly where that pressure went when it finally had nowhere else to go. The near-universal belief around the garage right now is not complicated: this partnership ends after 2026. The question is not whether it ends. The question is where Kyle Busch lands next. 3 realistic scenarios have been discussed within the garage community, and each one carries different variables. The most logical landing spot at this point is Spire Motorsports. Jeff Dickerson, Spire co-owner, is Busch's former business manager and longtime spotter. The personal relationship between them is already established and deep. Beyond that, Busch has won 4 times in the Truck Series with Spire across the last 3 seasons alone. The competitive foundation exists. The working relationship exists. The primary question becomes structural: whether Spire expands to a 4th Cup car or opens an existing seat to accommodate a driver of Busch's profile and market value. The second option is 23XI Racing. Kurt Busch, Kyle's older brother and a NASCAR Hall of Famer, currently works as a consultant and coach at 23XI. Denny Hamlin co-owns the team and spent years as Kyle's teammate at Joe Gibbs Racing. They know each other's personalities and work styles thoroughly. The chemistry and familiarity between all parties involved are already established without needing to be built from scratch. Whether 23XI would expand or open a seat depends heavily on how their current roster performs across the second half of the season, but this door is absolutely not closed. The third option is the most speculative but not impossible to imagine: a Busch brothers ownership venture. Kurt Busch has openly discussed the idea of co-owning a Cup team with Kyle once both of them are fully done competing as drivers. Names like Michael Andretti, who stepped back from Formula One pursuit and carries serious financial resources, have been floated as potential backers for such a venture. It remains a long shot in terms of timeline and complexity, but it exists as a real conversation, not just idle speculation. And then there is one wild card that changes the calculus on everything else. Brexton Busch turns 11 years old on May 18. He is roughly 5 years away from Truck Series eligibility. People inside the garage have said they believe Kyle would remain in the Cup garage in some reduced capacity just to stay connected to the sport's highest level as his son approaches that threshold. But watching what happened at Texas, Kyle Busch is not built to be a supporting character in anyone else's story. That much is clear. While all of that was unfolding around the number 8 car, Ryan Preece and Ty Gibbs were creating a separate and equally significant story elsewhere on the track. The friction between them started in Turn 1, escalated across Stage 2, and ended with Preece sending Gibbs into the Turn 3 wall on a restart. Gibbs' car slammed the barrier sideways and he retired in 35th place. Preece's radio communication beforehand became one of the most shared audio clips from the entire weekend: raw, direct, and completely unfiltered. His post-race explanation matched that energy exactly. He races people with the same respect he expects to receive in return, and when that respect is absent, he does not plan to extend any breaks to anyone. Gibbs responded on X with an eye roll emoji and the word, "Cheers." 3 words, or technically 1 word and a punctuation choice, that communicated everything without elaborating on anything. NASCAR's penalty for Preece, 25 points docked and a $50,000 fine. Kyle Busch received no penalty for his contact with Nemechek on the final lap, despite the footage looking, at minimum, equally deliberate to what Preece did. Whether that represents consistent officiating or not will be a conversation inside and outside the garage for weeks ahead. Christopher Bell had one of the most frustrating afternoons of his entire 2026 season at Texas, getting wiped out on lap 68 after taking evasive action around Gilliland. But what Bell said before the race started matters more than what happened to him during it. Speaking with Fox Sports, Bell called the superspeedway package a complete joke and described the racing under it as a lottery, pure chaos presented as competition, where strategy dissolves into a fuel-saving exercise and the final laps become a high-speed gamble on who gets wrecked last. He specifically noted that Stage 1 at the previous superspeedway event was genuinely entertaining because the fuel strategy created real decisions. The rest of the package, in his assessment, does not deliver that. This is not a driver venting post-game frustration. This is a coherent, specific, structural critique from one of the series' most analytically sharp voices, and it carries measurable weight heading into Daytona and Talladega. Back to the championship picture and what Elliott's win actually means for the title fight. Tyler Reddick still leads the series, 109 points over Hamlin, 117 points over Elliott. But look at the recent trajectory. Over his last 30 races dating back to Atlanta last June, Elliott has won 4 times. In the 87 starts before that stretch, he had 1 win. His average laps led per race has climbed from 9.3 to 18.5. He now accounts for 67% of Hendrick Motorsport's last 6 wins. Denny Hamlin finished second to Elliott for the second time this season. The gap to Reddick is 117 points, not insurmountable for a driver who is currently controlling races, winning races, and doing it with a pit crew that appears to be peaking at precisely the right moment in the season. Texas Motor Speedway on May 3, 2026 was not just a race result to file away and move on from. It was a pressure gauge, and almost everything it measured was running dangerously hot. Kyle Busch cracking under the accumulated weight of 100-plus winless starts. Ryan Preece following through on a public threat. Christopher Bell demanding structural accountability from the sport's leadership. Chase Elliott rising cleanly through all of it to win and quietly build a championship case that very few people were taking seriously back in February. None of these storylines resolve in 7 days. Watkins Glen is next, a road course, a different kind of pressure, but pressure all the same. And in a season that has proven more unpredictable by the week, the only thing anyone can say with certainty is that the 2026 Cup Series is nowhere close to being figured out by anyone. If you want to stay ahead of every story developing this season, the championship race, the driver market moves, the penalties, and everything happening inside the garages that doesn't make the highlight packages, hit that like button and subscribe to NASCAR Race News. We cover every race, every angle, and every storyline that actually matters, every single week. See you at Watkins Glen.